Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tuesdays with Trailblazers, brought to you by TechEdge AI, the video podcast where we bring you the latest trends and insights in AI and technology. I'm your host, Sadesh, and today we'll speak with Enzo Compagnoni, Regional VP and GM at Red Hat, who empowers and inspires teams to achieve excellence and customer satisfaction. So, without further ado, let's welcome Enzo. Hey, Enzo, how you doing?
Yeah, really well, Sid. Thanks for having me on the show, and a big hi to your viewers as well.
Great. We're excited to have you on our podcast. And at the same time, we're excited to see what great insights we get from you. So, Enzo, given your experience of over 25 years in the enterprise IT industry and 8+ years at Red Hat, what are some trends or challenges that have stood out over that period?
Well, Sid, look, it's a long span, and there's been so many. But look, if I focus on some of the big ones, obviously, mobile everywhere was a big thing some time ago with smartphones everywhere, and it kind of changed what consumers and citizens expected in the way they engage with technology, right? Since then, we've also seen obviously digital transformation and automation is a big trend, and especially this adoption of technologies to try and modernize the workflow to meet those customers and citizen expectations. This, of course, kind of exploded during COVID. And with all of the information around us, it kind of made automation a bit of an imperative. In that time as well, and especially in the space we play on, we've seen a massive shift to DevOps and agile methodologies, right? The combination of collaboration between development and ops, right? And we've seen massive acceleration of software delivery, increased quality and adaptability. And of course, can't forget the cloud computing revolution, right? It's been a massive one, shifting from on-premise to the hyperscalers and been especially important for the startups and trying to scale. And of course, being an open source company, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the impact that open source has had. And it's become kind of a de facto source of innovation for enterprise and government. We've been around for over 30 years. And in the first 10 years for Red Hat, most people trying to sell Red Hat solutions or open source had to contend with convincing people that it was safe and everything. That's gone away. In the last 10 years or so, it's become where people tend to go to, whether that be for in the big projects like Linux, or whether you look at web frameworks and languages like Ruby, Spring, Node.js, or cloud native technologies like Kubernetes, AI ML with Hugging Face, or even big data projects like Apache Spark, Kafka. And even when you look at Android on your phone, which is 90% Linux, all of these technologies have provided cost-effective, flexible, and community-driven solutions, which kind of enables innovation and levels the playing field for organizations of pretty much all sizes.
Got it. Enzo, how do you leverage your expertise in cloud computing and solution selling to drive innovation, cost reduction, and enhance security for your customers?
Look, what we've noticed is that, and I mean, you would have seen it, when we came through the period of the pandemic, all the organizations accelerated pretty quickly to settle into a new way of operating. And it kind of led to this massive, fast, accelerated adoption of cloud, right? And in that rush, a lot of the companies that we spoke to went to a very quick, cloud first model. And it was kind of cloud first no matter what, right? It was kind of whatever the question, cloud was the answer. Since then, and as companies tried to balance what you talk about, balance innovation, cost, and security decisions, they moved away from just cloud first to probably more of a cloud right approach, right? And a shift to what's right for my workloads. And so when it comes to cloud, what we've seen is really hybrid's the way to go. And basically that combination of public, private, on-prem right through to the edge. And that used to be contested a bit a few years ago. What was going to be? Was it going to be public, private? What was it going to be? But customers have already decided. They made their choices and decided that this was the way to go. And most are adopting a hybrid model. At Red Hat, we've kind of always recommended an open hybrid cloud strategy, as it kind of enables that flexible cloud experience with the speed, stability, and kind of scale that you kind of require for business transformation. And obviously with open source and open standards, it becomes the critical foundation for an open hybrid cloud strategy. I know from experience that I've seen some of your other podcasts, you like to hear some local stories and a bit of a narrative. So let me share one with you. Suncorp Group, and I can share this one because it's a public case study. They were trying to respond, Suncorp, to changing business needs, and they adopted Red Hat open hybrid cloud solutions. And what they were trying to do is prioritize delivery of digital first and personalized experience for their customers. And this was a way to try to modernize their enterprise technology and drive business growth. They did this creating new experiences, and what they needed was a multi-cloud development platform and something that could enable their developers to kind of build those new applications quickly and sustainably at a kind of a low cost. They did it initially by modernizing some of the key applications, and they did it, on containers. One example was Cape. It's one of their key pricing engines. And they did it on premise with Red Hat OpenShift, and that gave them some really good benefits initially. But as it happens inevitably in business, some of the business needs change, and they declared to the market that they were going to exit the data center footprint by
Mhm.
2025. And they came to us to this, and we utilized our as a service version of OpenShift to move the key workloads onto the two main providers from them, Microsoft and AWS. Charles Pizzato there, the executive GM, he went on to quote both at our customer summit and in the press that what
Mhm.
this gave them was true application portability and contestability with the two hyperscalers in what he determined was a true open hybrid multi-cloud environment. Hopefully that answers that question for you.
Absolutely. It really helps, the storytelling angle of it, where the social proof out there really helps. So, coming back to the next question, Enzo, how do you integrate the innovations from global open source communities into product development?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. The open source communities play a critical role in innovation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's important, and that innovation doesn't happen by chance, right? It
True.
usually it's the outcome of a proven process. Everyone knows that when you work with open source, it's a key way to promote collaboration and sharing among users, and it permits contributors to make modifications to source code, and you end up with the best ideas surfacing, especially when you've got a healthy developer community ecosystem. That
Mm-hmm.
decentralized nature of open source communities means that the innovation is not driven by one single entity, but really the collective input of everyone involved. That democratic process really allows for continuous improvement and adaptation and makes the software more flexible and responsive to real world needs. What we've seen, and I'm sure you've seen as well in the complex IT landscape, no
Mm-hmm.
single vendor can meet all of the needs of key customers and their problems, right? And through open source, customers then are free to choose the software that suits their needs, and it helps them become more streamlined and efficient, right? So organizations then benefit from this community-driven upstream innovation, but then you add enterprise-level support, which helps them more safely use open source technology. At Red Hat, kind of the development model begins in the open source community with
Mm-hmm.
thousands of contributors, and then results in a kind of finished product that is tried, tested, and trusted for enterprise IT, right?
Got it. Great to know that actually. Since you leverage innovation through open source communities, how does it, how do you ensure that it gives back and contributes meaningfully to these communities?
Yeah, well, look, I'll share a little bit of what we do here at Red Hat when we do that in terms of collaboration and what we do in terms of how we contribute back, right? Because every organization, when they do it differently, right, in terms of when they contribute. But if I use the way that Red Hat does it, is we're a proud contributor to all aspects of the software stack. Our
Mm-hmm.
contribution, will take many forms, right? Whether we participate in creating community-powered upstream projects, we contribute code, we collaborate on content. We also do stewarding of projects. We mentor leaders. We sponsor events. We integrate multiple upstream projects. And then we foster all the open source community platforms. And then we help commercialize these platforms and projects with a rich ecosystem of services, partners, and certifications, right? And that helps contribute back to the upstream projects of which we're a part of. We also do a lot of work in a wide range of standardization efforts that help define future interoperable technologies. And just so you know, our products are entirely open source in the strictest sense. They're licensed to our customers under open source licenses, which we then pass through from upstream to the customer. And we provide customers with the source code, all of it. To give a bit of sense, in that spirit of collaboration, we decline to enforce patents against open source users. We make our processing code pretty much accessible by doing this. And then you empower the customers and contributors to participate in kind of shaping those technologies. Like if many of your viewers haven't done it already, one big advice I'd give to them is, if they're not already doing it, is to encourage their teams to contribute to those upstream open source projects. They'll find that by doing this, you'll get back much more than you give in the form of better software, better ideas, and importantly, better skilled and more engaged employees, right?
Absolutely. We'll have to thank you for that tip for our audience. And I guess I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of people who would probably use that trick.
Yeah.
Sorry, tip. So let's come back to Enzo as the leader. How do you
Mhm.
balance leading by example and clear communication, along with empowering your team members to take ownership and contribute their own ideas?
Yeah. Well, look, the way we lead at Red Hat and the way we do it is within probably the culture of openness, right? I'm going to say we borrow. I won't say we steal, but we do steal from some of the DNA and the principles of open source in the way we lead our organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, our culture and what I look for our leaders is built kind of on the principles of open source. And
Mm-hmm.
really there's probably 5 key principles that I look for both my leadership team and associates in the company to kind of adopt that help us drive ownership, help drive a culture of innovation, and throughout the whole company. And if I go through all the 5 of them, it's first one, and it's relevant for open source as well as in leadership. Transparency is a key one. All of our decisions we make are transparent to the extent that everyone affected understands the process and what arguments we've kind of led to the point we've got that decision. And they're open to assessment. Another key part, which is relevant to open source and relevant to our culture, is we really drive inclusivity. We seek out diverse points of view, and we kind of invite those perspectives into the dialogue wherever possible. A big part of the work in open source projects that we adopt in our organizational culture is collaboration. We know that work gets better when more individuals and teams are involved, and it kind of lends to much more enhancement over time. This kind of joint work produces better, more sustainable outcomes. Another piece, and hopefully it's come through in our discussions when I talk about open source, is a sense of community. By default, we are definitely communal by default. We've got sort of shared values and purpose guiding us, and it's clear. But even though those values are clear, it's also subject to continual revision and critique, and it's an instrument in defining the conditions for our success. And lastly, but we don't take this lightly. I know I've heard a lot of companies talk about this now, but we've been doing this for 30 years because of the work we do in the upstream and open source. Meritocracy is key to us, right? And in the upstream projects, you talk to developers around the people that rise in pecking order in an upstream project are the ones that are committing the highest quality and the most amount of code. So they say it's code over credentials that rise your pecking order in an open source project. Same thing with how we drive inside the organization. We say that associates and leaders, they're valued for their contributions, not their title or their tenure. And from experience, this open environment is much more conducive to driving innovation as well as ownership when people are able to work together using kind of these sort of principles. The best ideas end up winning, right? Same as the open source projects, right? Hopefully that makes sense to how that translates from our experience.
So I'm just intrigued by the red hat behind you. So I'd love to know about the story of the origin of the red hat.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. A lot of people who aren't aware have the misconception that the fedora is the origins of the red hat. It wasn't. The original red hat was a lacrosse hat. One of the original founders of Red Hat, actually a guy by the name of Mark Ewing, he had his grandfather's lacrosse hat and he wore it at university. And as he was writing software code and doing things, and he was known as someone that was very generous with his time and helping people. So when he was in the library at the university, people would say, hey, you want some help? Go talk to the guy with the red hat. And over time, that lacrosse red hat become a fedora hat as we founded the company. So every Red Hat employee, when he joins, gets a Red Hat fedora. Right.
That is wonderful. Never knew about it. So thank absolutely. Another question I had, Enzo. Just let's put the crystal ball out there. We know technology is pretty much evolving every day. So what do we see in the next decade? How do open source communities evolve, or what exactly do you see happening different in the next couple of decades, or no, I would say the next decade with respect to open source communities?
Yeah, look, and making predictions about the future is a dangerous game, Sid, as you know that, right? But look, there's a few areas that I think I can be pretty safe on, right? It wouldn't be a tech interview if I didn't mention AI, and I hadn't up to this point. I know everyone does, but look, I think the open source impact on AI is going to become massive and prevalent, like it has been for most other technology revolutions, right? And I think AI is going to be a transformative force. I do believe that, but the flexibility and choice piece are going to become critical, right? And if you think about like where Red Hat is really focused, similar to other places, we're focused on lowering a lot of the barriers to AI adoption, right? We're addressing the complexity and cost and the resource demands, right, that you normally traditionally associate with AI. In the current way of looking at it, it's only now that companies with massive amounts of resources and, you're going to have to create more and more energy demands to deal with it if we stay in the current models, right? And so our approach is look at how do we democratize this, right? We've started with the Granite family of open source language models, which are smaller and more efficient, reducing the need for the GPU intensive resources. We've then added InstructLab, which helps organizations fine tune these models using synthetic data, allowing them to create sort of these larger data sets without the computational overhead. And then we've got some of the technology around RHEL AI and OpenShift AI to provide the platforms for developing, testing, and deploying these models on-prem, public cloud, or edge. Now, we're making sure that they are able to be done on smaller models. And finally, I don't know if you've heard, we recently acquired Neural Magic, and this technology optimizes AI workloads to run efficiently on standardized hardware, reducing the need for specialized accelerators. So when you combine all of this, we'll deliver flexibility, scale, and cost reductions. And so I think what we see is that the future of AI is going to be open. It's going to be based on open source standards. And as other large technology waves in the last 25 years have been, will be on open source. So I see that as a key one, right, that in the future, the contribution there. The other one I'd see is probably, around edge computing, massive space. And we're seeing it with a lot of the spend increasing and a lot of the investments there. And obviously, we're playing a key part in helping around that space. And I'm seeing it right now with customers in retail, for example, locally using it to help around theft prevention. I see that only continuing as people are looking for insights right at the edge to enable that insight experiences at the moment they're needed. Another shift I see, you talk about shift in the next 5 or 10 years, is probably the shift from most of your customers today are using legacy virtualization solutions, right?
Sure.
And we see that shift happening from legacy to probably more the Kubernetes native virtualizations. There's a big community around this in the upstream, and the projects are just growing every day. As people are reassessing their virtualization platforms, and many are probably at that crossroad, and they're looking to migrate to a unified, cost-effective platform that can handle both existing virtual machines and prepare them for like IT modernization with edge computing and AI. And we engage with a lot of companies in this space to modernize their old legacy virtualization. So I see that. If you allow me one more minute, one that is not a technology one, I'm seeing a massive shift in the way people are expecting us to develop our partner ecosystem beyond so outside of the technology. And I just hosted a partner advisory board and we had a lot of partners together. And what I'm seeing is that companies are buying and implementing technologies in different ways, and you're seeing them in the models that are coming out there, and the growth of cloud marketplace over the years. The more recent economic force and public policy to navigate sort of these disruptive trends like AI and virtualization. And organizations are looking for us and other providers for holistic solutions that kind of go the full spectrum of IT, and we can't do that alone, right? So to solve some of these complex customer problems, we see a need to bring together like the rich ecosystem of partners. And many of our recent engagements have now commonly involved not just us and one partner, but us and a large GSI, plus a local partner, plus a hyperscaler, plus an ISV, and us being able to bring together like a rich ecosystem for our customers. And we see it as kind of better together for our customers. And this trend, I only see accelerating with the complexity and interoperability required to solve these problems.
And if you don't mind, I just have the one last question. And
Sure.
this is something, this is a trending topic we've actually seen with regards to AI, is how ethical it is in terms of usage of AI. So where do you sit, or do you probably believe that it's ethical or it's super ethical, or do you believe that there are certain limitations in terms when we consider ethics in terms of the usage of AI?
Look, it's probably not my place to comment on ethics of AI, right? It's not a kind of area. I mean but like anything, I think things need to have guardrails, right? We do our best to provide what we can, and what we provide more so for companies is provide them full transparency of the models and the source, and that's where we're coming from. We're trying to create upstream projects that do provide that transparency so people can see where does the data come from and all that. The area of
Absolutely. Some golden words spoken there. Really insightful. Thank you so much, Enzo. Some really insightful thoughts out there, some really informative portions out there. And I really enjoyed hosting you on our podcast Tuesdays with Trailblazers. And thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, stay tuned with TechEdge AI for more insights into all things AI and technology. Till we meet again, signing off, your host, Sadesh. Thank you so much.